what comes next for Research In Motion? It's a valid question after yesterday. The stock fell 6% to its lowest level in 2 years after an analyst said RIM may face the same fate as Nokia, declining market share and shrinking margins. Since mid-February, RIM shares are down a whopping 42%. Michael Mace is a technologist who has been sounding the warning about RIM since last year in his blog, Mobile Opportunity, which counts thousands of subscribers. Mike is a former executive at Palm and a former executive at Apple. He now works as the CEO of Cera Technology, an early-stage startup in the information management business. Mike joins us on the phone from San Jose, California. Mike, very good to have you here. Let me ask you this question. You've been looking at RIM for quite a long time, and you've been trying to analyze this company's prospects. You made a very articulate case a number of months ago for why RIM's future was dim. At this point, several months later, is RIM in a death spiral?
I don't think we can say they're in a death spiral yet, but they're definitely at risk. They're making a lot of platform transitions in terms of their operating system. They're talking about a lot of new products. And whenever you do that, it's almost like an invitation to your existing customers to say, well, look around. You know, we're doing something new. Maybe you should compare us to the other stuff that people are doing. And if you look at the customer surveys, companies that have talked to RIM customers about their future plans, their install base is just not as solid as some of the other mobile platforms. A lot of them are planning to consider other things. So they're not dead, but if they do things wrong, they could get into a situation where it would be very difficult to recover.
Let's talk for a moment about mobile platforms, because in this very same blog posting that I'm referring to you several months ago, you said there was room in the industry for several platforms, in the wireless industry I'm speaking of. But what I'm wondering now is whether Erik Schmidt is right that 4 platforms are going to dominate the entire consumer technology industry: Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. So not just wireless, but everything else too. Or do you still believe that there is room for at least one other platform in wireless, whether it's RIM or Microsoft?
Yeah, I don't think there's any single magic number. It's more a matter of how well people execute on the products that they're doing. I think, the Windows standard that developed in PCs is always the example that people look at, and they tend to say, well, because we consolidated to one thing in PCs, the same thing is going to happen in mobile. But it hasn't happened so far, right? We haven't gotten a single platform that's taken over, and I think Windows turns out to be a little bit of a fluke in that you had this big vendor, IBM, who caused everybody to standardize on it, and then they gave up control on the hardware there. They allowed licensees to come in. Nobody's going to make that mistake in mobile of setting up a single standard that dominates everyone. So I think we're going to see multiple standards. But if you want to be a standard, you have to do a good job of taking care of your innovation. You've got to be keeping up with the Apples of the world. And you also have to have something that makes you really distinctive. And what RIM's fallen into, in my opinion, is this trap of trying to be just like Apple. And they're not like Apple. They're not going to be as good at Apple at things that Apple does well. Instead, I wish they'd been doing more on innovating around the things that RIM does great, around things like corporate email, really driving that forward. They're trying to now, but it's very late in the game to be pushing on this stuff. They should have been doing some of these things several years ago. You
make a very good point, Mike, that innovation really can change the game, a disruptive technology, whatever you want to call it. But what is the likelihood, really, that the disruptive technology in wireless or on a wireless platform, the next one, is going to come from RIM? Is it not more likely it's going to come from a smaller company, a more nimble company, a company that isn't as wedded to its approach as Jim Balsley and Mike Lazaridis are?
You would like to see more nimbleness from them. Let's put it that way. Well, on the other hand, they've had a long history of being successful when all the analysts said that they were about to go out of business. So if you look back several years ago, people were saying, well, Microsoft is going to go into corporate email, RIM should drop its hardware, they should just be a software vendor. They stuck with the hardware, and they did very well. So they've got a history of doing good things. What I haven't seen lately, though, is the focus on what is it that's going to make RIM really distinctive. Instead, it's almost like they're trying to fire a shotgun at everything, and they're not big enough to compete everywhere on everything. Instead, you'd like to see this theme that says we're good for one type of customer, here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're really unique for that. And I haven't seen that focus. That's what scares me the most.
But being good for one type of customer does not, to me, sound like a strategy that's going to make RIM a company competitive on a financial basis with the likes of Apple and Google.
Well, if you pick a big enough market, it can be fine. I mean, the real question is, do you want to be this undifferentiated player who's in third place trying to appeal to everybody, or do you want to just own a big chunk of customers and do a great job for them? And in that case, you can get really good margins, right, if the customers are loyal to you in one particular market. So I think there are markets that are big enough. The smartphone market is huge. We're all going to probably carry smartphones at some point in the future. So, you know, it's almost like the auto industry. Would you like to own one segment of it and be really, really great, or are you going to try to be the number 4 player trying to sell to everybody at the same time, in which case your margins probably won't be as good.
An excellent analogy, and we'll end it there. Mike, thanks so much for being with us. Mike Mace, CEO of Cera Technology. He's a former executive at Palm and at Apple.